Good.
Excellent.
Good job, Denise. I was surprised when I got a phone call about 30 minutes before my shift ended. I asked my coworker who it was. He said, "Hello." I went into the office. I picked up the phone. It was my boyfriend. He said, "I'm at a Whalers game in Hartford. I'm going to be a little bit late, probably around midnight, maybe 1. I was like, "What?" He goes, "I'm at a Whalers game in Hartford with Mark. We're running late. I'll be there around midnight, maybe 1, probably more like 2. Before I got a chance to say what again, he had hung up the phone. I felt as if a mystery had landed at my feet. I had never worked as a detective before. As a matter of fact, for the past 2 years, I had worked at a posh private psychiatric institute. However, I had read many Nancy Drew books and watched countless episodes of Columbo. I thought about what Columbo would do. I mentally put on a wrinkled trench coat, picked up a cigar, and I decided to start my investigation with my coworkers. I worked with all guys. I knew that at least one of them would be a hockey fan, or a Whalers fan, or both for that matter. So I went back into the other room. I dropped back into their superficial conversation. And after a few minutes, I casually said, so by the way, does anybody know where the Whalers are playing tonight? One coworker said, "Oh yeah, they're playing away. They're up in Toronto playing the Maple Leafs. It's going to be a real nail-biter. Yeah, go Whalers, they're going to win." Now, in any other situation at any other workplace, my question would have gone unnoticed. But mental health professionals are masters of dialogue and enjoy analyzing the internal motivating factors of individual behavior. So he started to ask me about my motivation for asking a question, given that he knew that I was not a Whalers fan or a hockey fan. And he went on and on asking me what my motivation was. And finally I just gave in and said, "Okay, fine, if you must know, my boyfriend Scott just called me and he said that he was running late because he was at a Hartford Whalers game." Upon hearing that, he started joking with me about how fast my boyfriend Scott was going to have to drive to get back from Toronto to Connecticut in less than an hour and a half. Or how long I was going to have to wait. He stopped teasing me when he saw my face blanch. He offered me a ride home. I gracefully declined. At approximately 12:45 a.m., I started to regret my decision for not accepting a ride home with my coworker. The night shift was all present. They were a skeleton crew and they were not allowed to leave hospital grounds at all. I knew that I was stuck. I started to think about Columbo again and what he would do. I neatened up the collar of my wrinkled trench coat, picked up my cigar, flicked an ash off of it, and decided to restart my investigation. So my boyfriend Scott had said that he was out with Mark. I knew who Mark was. My boyfriend Scott had grown up living with his mom and with his grandparents in their house, and they lived 5 houses down from Mark's house. They were best friends from the time they were probably toddlers up until the age of 12. And at that point, my boyfriend Scott's mother remarried and moved out of state. That didn't matter though, because every summer she would send him back to Connecticut to his grandmother's house, and he and Mark would play, and they were best buddies, and they were together all summer long. And that happened from the age of 12 all the way up to the age of 18. That's when Mark went away to college out of state. My boyfriend joined the military, and he also went out of state. 4 years went by. Mark finished college. My boyfriend got out of the military. We had met. And, but Mark decided to go on to graduate school out of state. So when we had moved to Connecticut 2 years ago, my boyfriend was hoping that Mark was there, but of course he wasn't. He was at grad school, and he had been kind of pining for Mark and wanting to reestablish their friendship. So as luck would have it, though, for the first 6 months that we lived in Connecticut, we lived at my boyfriend's grandparents' house, 5 houses down from Mark's parents' house. And at least once or twice a day, I would walk and or run past their house. I knew exactly how to spell his unusual last name, and I knew his address. So I went into the office, I got a phone book, one of those yellow things that you flip open with pages. And I started to look for Mark's parents' house. That's where I was going to start my investigation. It didn't take me too long to find their number. By the time I placed my call, it was about 1:30 a.m. I made sure the phone rang at least 20 times, maybe more like 25. And eventually, a very sleepy sounding guy answered the phone. Hello? And then I heard a clicking sound, and I heard him say, Mom, I got it. And I was fairly certain that that was probably Mark, but I wanted to make exactly certain, so I said, are you Mark Samazik? And he said, yeah. And, hello, my name is Dana Savo. I am Scott Worthington's girlfriend. He said that he was out with you tonight at a Whalers hockey game in Hartford. Now, I am fully aware that they were not in Hartford. They were actually playing an away game in Toronto against the Maple Leafs. I've heard that it was a nail-biter game. I am wondering if you were out with my boyfriend, Scott. Maybe I just misheard that you were at a Whalers game. And if you were out with him, did he just drop you off on his way to pick me up? Mark said, I haven't seen Scott in at least 10 years, probably more like 15. I wished him a good night's sleep. I thanked him for his help, and I hung up the phone. A little after 2 a.m., there was a knock at the side door. I opened it up. It was my boyfriend, Scott. He was very happy to see me. He kissed me as usual. I waved goodnight to the night shift staff, and we got into the car and drove back to our apartment. And on the way home, I started to ask him questions about his night out with Mark. He was forthcoming with information. He gave me plenty of details about their night out together. When we got home, despite the lateness of the hour, we decided to do our usual bedtime routine, taking a shower, getting into our full wave waterbed, letting the full waves facilitate the movement of our bodies. The next morning, we did our bedtime routine in reverse, but a little bit quicker because we needed to get to the gym. We both had class, and then we both had to go to work. Fortunately, my boyfriend worked at the same posh psychiatric hospital, but he was in security. So he had to walk through my area as part of his job multiple times each shift. Each time he walked by, I would capture him and pepper him with questions about the night before. Yeah. It was amazing how much detail he gave me about his night out with Mark. And he gladly and readily answered all of my questions that I asked. Finally, our shifts were over. And as we were heading back to our apartment that night, he said that he was so happy that we both had the day off together the following day because we were finally going to get to spend some good time together. I continued to ask him questions. He continued to be very forthcoming with information. We went home, we did our usual bedtime routine, and then the following morning on our day off, we did our bedtime routine in reverse, but we were able to spend a lot more time and attention to detail. Finally, around mid-morning, we figured it was time to get out of bed, and he suggested we go out for lunch or brunch. He wanted to go to our favorite restaurant. I thought that sounded like a great idea. We got there, we sat at our usual booth, we ordered our usual breakfast meals, and then at one point in time I said, hey, you know what? And he goes, no, what? And I go, yeah, the Whalers weren't playing in Hartford the night before last. They were playing out of town up in Toronto, the Maple Leafs. I've heard it was a real nail-biter of a game. He looked at me and he goes, what? Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? You mean to tell me that you've sat there for the last couple of days and let me lie? Oh my, I can't believe you asked me all those questions and you let me go on and on. How could you do that to me? And I looked across from him and I said, no, you did that all by yourself. Thank you.